Hi, everyone. I am so excited today because I get to present HobbleJog's second grant for the 2022 year to the Brain Injury Association of Virginia, specifically for their Camp Bruce McCoy program. Here to accept the grant today is Anne McDonnell. Ms. McDonnell is the Executive Director of the Brain Injury Association of Virginia. She has a BS in Occupational Therapy from the Medical College of Virginia, a postgraduate certificate in Healthcare Management from Old Dominion University, and a Master's of Public Administration from Virginia Commonwealth University. Anne has over 35 years of experience in brain injury rehabilitation and advocacy across a continuum of hospital and community-based settings. She is a certified brain injury specialist trainer, holds a clinical faculty position in the School of Occupational Therapy at VCU, serves on the Virginia Brain Injury Council, and is chair of the VCU TBI Model Systems Advisory Board. In 2011, Anne was named one of the influential women of Virginia by Virginia Lawyers Weekly. In 2014, she received the State Association Leadership Award by the Brain Injury Association of America. In 2015, she was chosen to serve with 50 of the nation's top brain injury researchers and clinicians on the Icahn School of Medicine project to develop guidelines for the rehabilitation of adults with moderate to severe traumatic brain injury. And in 2020, she was presented with the William A.B. Ditto Excellence in Public Policy from the National Association of State Head Injury Administrators. Anne, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. I am going to share the certificate that we sent you.
Here we go.
Yeah, we are so excited to be able to present this to you today. So your bio is just absolutely amazing and lots and lots of questions on that on its own. But today we're talking about Camp Bruce McCoy. So why don't you share with us exactly what Camp Bruce McCoy is? And, I'll ask you some questions as you go along.
Well, thank you, Carrie. I'm so excited. We're grateful for the grant award from the HobbleJog Foundation because it's really important to camp. And I could talk about camp all day. I was a baby occupational therapist at Sheltering Arms when the then executive director of BIAV came and said, we've got this idea for a camp for people with brain injuries and we need a few volunteers. So I went, and 40 years later, I'm still there. So I have been involved with this program pretty much since its inception.
And it's been around for 40 years?
Mm-hmm, yeah, next year will be our 40th year. It got started by the woman who was the president of BIAV at the time. Her son had sustained a significant brain injury playing football back in the middle 70s, long before we started talking about it. Mm-hmm. And she needed a break. And so that first year we did a weekend camp in Chesterfield and we had probably, 7 or 8 survivors. And the next year it grew a little bit more and it continued to grow. We eventually moved out of that space because it grew so large. And today, for the last, 25 or 30 years, we've been conducting camp at a place called the Triple R Ranch in Chesapeake, Virginia. Each week, there are 2 weeks of camp. Each week, we have about 40 to 45 survivors come and stay with us for a week. The survivors are able to choose from activities that are scheduled for them every day. We have a program director that goes down and says, tomorrow, John, would you like to go horseback riding or fishing or do the ropes course or arts and crafts or canoeing or archery or riflery? We have a long list of activities that campers can engage in. We also do things as groups, we have a scavenger hunt, we have karaoke, we have a tie-dye, we have dance night. We also have some free time that campers can utilize to take a nap if they need to, because many of them aren't used to this sort of activity level. They can go to the camp store, they can hang out in the pool, or they can watch a movie. So they each have some free time during the day, lots of time to engage in small group activities and groups with the entire activities with the entire group of campers that we have there. The campers range in abilities from individuals who require total assistance to eat, to toilet, to people who live independently and drive themselves to camp. And so you can imagine the programming for that variety of counselors or campers is important, because we don't want to do things that would insult or not more, campers who may have more function ability or not include campers who may have less functional ability. So we hire attendants and counselors to work at the program every year. Usually these are college students who are looking to go into careers related to occupational therapy or physical therapy or even medicine. And they're looking for experience and resume builders and materials for interview questions. They're hired as counselors to help the campers get up in the morning, go to bed at night, manage meals. The counselors also run our activities when they can. So for example, when we have leather work, we have counselors do all of that. There are some activities our counselors can't run because the RRR insurance doesn't let us. So we need to have a RRR member to run the ropes course, for example, or the pool, or archery and riflery.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Some of the counselors are hired to serve as attendants. So we assign them one-to-one to a needier camper. For example, someone who needs total assistance with eating or toileting or showering, for example. So these folks have the opportunity to get really up close and personal with an individual and learn what their 24-hour day is like, to being able to engage with 10 to 20 different campers in a group activity or a small group activity and sort of see how they interact with each other. The program has been instrumental in empowering survivors to do things that they never thought they could do. And we also know that many counselors have come to camp not really sure what they're going to be when they grow up, but they find themselves at camp and they decide to go in to a professional field. I can tell you that at least 4 counselors who came to camp either not knowing what they wanted to do or having decided that they wanted to pursue another major, changed their major after their experience at camp so that they could become healthcare professionals.
Wow. So let me ask you, a couple things come to mind. One, what are the age ranges of your campers?
Anybody, usually it's 17, 18 and on up. I think this year our oldest camper was somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 and our youngest was probably 17. The camp is conducted the week before and the week after Memorial Day. So if kids are still in public schools, that's tough for them.
Right. Okay. So I am imagining that this, especially for your campers that have that need more assistance and have caregivers at home that are helping them. This is also, so not only is it beneficial to the brain injury survivors because they get to experience new and fun things and meet people who have had similar experiences to them, but it also gives those caregivers a week of respite.
Yeah, for me, one of my first experiences at camp really brought that home to me. And I've said since then, for me, camp is as much about the caregivers as it is the campers. I think it was my first or second year. I was relatively new, and we had a young woman who had been to camp, and she had a lot of physical disabilities. And she had some cognitive disabilities, but she was lovely and just a happy person. So I enjoyed taking care of her, except during the middle of the night. And about 3 o'clock every morning, she would say, "Anne, I've got to go to the bathroom." And because of her level of physical disabilities, this was not a barely awake, stumble to the bathroom sort of thing. This is a hard wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's going to be a half-hour activity. And so the story that I tell is, you know, it was about 3 days in, and I heard her call my name, and I thought to myself, if I don't move, and if my breathing doesn't change, maybe she'll go back to sleep. And at that moment, I was sort of filled with shame, because I thought to myself, you're a healthy 26-year-old 3 days in, and you're looking for a way out. And her 60-year-old mother does this 51 weeks out of the year. Get your ass out of bed. And that moment changed me forever. Because as an occupational therapist working in a hospital, I was never going to appreciate how hard it was to be a 24-hour caregiver. And that moment crystallized it for me.
Yeah. And I would imagine that most people, I mean, unless they are a caregiver of someone with those kinds of needs, most people would never have that experience.
No.
So understanding, having a place where there is that understanding built in that caregivers do need respite, and they need to know that their loved one is being taken care of appropriately. I mean, gosh, I have goosebumps right now. I feel like, wow, you know. So I'll tell you, when I had a traumatic brain injury about 8.5 years ago, and fortunately I recovered very well. But for a period of time, I had 2 young children, and I couldn't drive. I had my arm in a sling. I had my neck in a brace, and my parents had to move in with me because I was a single parent of 2 children. So they moved in with me so that they could not only take care of my kids, but me too. So they went from being parents that, you know, all their kids had flown, right?
Empty nesters.
They went from being empty nesters to having 3 people that they had to take care of 24 hours a day. And I wasn't stable enough in my balance at that point to go to the bathroom by myself. I mean, I could, like, just walking there was challenging for me. So, and, you know, I had a 4 and an 8-year-old. My 4-year-old got up a lot still. So, you know, just in that, so I feel from the caregiver's perspective, I remember how grateful I was to my parents for giving me that. And I also recognize how very hard it was. So knowing that there is a place where caregivers who are doing that all year round can send their loved one to get that break so that they can be there for their loved one for the rest of the year is just astounding. So
I tell a story about one mom. I love Shirley. So Shirley's son had a brain tumor, and so he was one of these folks that looked fine, but, you know, was very impaired. And so Shirley called, and she was going to bring him to camp for the first time, but she really wasn't sure we were going to be able to handle him. Like most first-time moms, I've had this conversation with all of them. And I said, Shirley, it will be fine. We have experienced professionals there. We have a nurse on site. We have a doctor on call. It will be fine. They live in Chesterfield, which is about 2.5 hours from camp. So the first year, Shirley came down, she dropped him off, and she stayed in Virginia Beach, only about 30 minutes away, in case she needed to pick him up early. The second year, she brought him to camp and drove back to Chesterfield. Progress. The third year, she dropped him off at camp, drove straight to Norfolk International Airport, and went to Key West. Who doesn't want to be a part of that?
I
know.
vacation, how wonderful.
Yeah. And I mean,
Wonderful.
families come back absolutely renewed. You know, everybody needs a break.
Absolutely.
Couples need an opportunity to date again and not be caregivers. You know, it's just the best. It's just the best.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. So it sounds like, based on what you said, that it's super customized for each camper.
Mhm.
And yet you said you have like 40 campers per week. That's a lot. How many staff members do you have?
Well, we start planning in January, and the camp manager staff, who are all professionals, occupational therapists, physical therapists, nurses. We have an occupational therapy student. We come together and we start planning the program because there are a lot of things that go into it. I mean, we have to rent wheelchair accessible porta-johns.
Mm-hmm.
Just and 5 different locations around a 300-acre campground, for example.
Wow.
We have to get golf carts so that the nurse could be someplace if he needed to be quickly, or we can transport campers who are very slow walkers from one activity to another.
Mm-hmm.
We go through, I don't even know how many cans of Lysol and hand sanitizer and gloves and all of that. We have, generally the ratio is about 2 campers to 1 staff person, sometimes 3 to 1. It depends on the cabin, you know, because we can put campers who are more independent all together in a cabin and just have somebody sort of checking in on them, to a cabin that needs to be staffed a little bit more heavily because the campers are a little bit more needy. We do try to balance that out.
Sure.
And we do have a very large lodge, and one half of it is the guy's side and one half of it is the girl's side. So it's co-ed, but segregated.
Okay. Nice. Wow.
Yeah. And so on a typical day, you know, for the morning activity, we'll get up at about 7 o'clock in the morning. We have breakfast at 8:15. The first activity starts at 9, and campers would have an opportunity to choose from horseback riding, fishing, archery and riflery, games, and something else. There's usually 5 activities that they can pick from, and that happens again at 10:30, and it happens again at 3. The other times during the day are the group activities, and so like Tuesday night is dance night, and that is the best night ever. You know, at 4:30 on Tuesdays, the girls, their activity is beauty shop. So they go back and they put on makeup and they curl their hair and they put on their pretty dresses for the dance. The boys, not so much because they're still boys.
Yeah. They don't care.
So they just hang out, and some of them do shower at that period of time. As you can imagine, the bathrooms can get sort of crowded if everybody decides that they want to shower in the morning. So some of them will shower in the afternoon, and everybody just gets ready for the dance. We have a DJ that comes in, and it's just the best thing you'd ever see.
Oh, how wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of makes me feel like there should be camp for everyone, because, you know, like my 13-year-old daughter is spending a week at camp, and everything that you're saying is pretty much what she'll be doing at camp. So it's a regular camp experience.
Yeah. We do s'mores and the campfire sing along on Friday night. I mean, yes, it's camp.
How wonderful. And really, I mean, as an adult, with a brain injury or not, as an adult, being able to relive that has got to be so invigorating for your campers.
Yeah, you know, once people become adults, opportunities like this get fewer and further between. Kids have lots of opportunities through county parks and rec programs and inclusion things that are being done for kids by parks and rec programs across the country. But that really does sort of go away. And we know so many folks with brain injuries end up to be adults with brain injuries. And so it's really important to be able to provide them something that allows them to establish an identity themselves. This week, I am not Shannon's responsibility. This week, I'm at camp, you know?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, what a fabulous sense of independence and, adventure and being able to be social. Things that, people who need a whole lot of care don't really get an option to do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
That's got to be a huge sense of freedom for the campers. And, anybody who has a caregiver, particularly if that caregiver is your parent or, some other loved one who's hovering over you all the time, that's got to be a huge sense of freedom. Like, yes, it's great for both parties to be separated and have some time and space from each other.
It's interesting because there's this talk of inclusive camps, that we should have a camp that's not just for brain injuries, it would be for anybody. And I don't disagree with that. But one of the things that we find to be true is that when we do a camp for adults with brain injury, they find a community that's unlike any other community. All of these folks have gone through the same thing. Their outcomes may have been different, but they've all gone through something that disrupted their life and the lives of their families. And those sorts of things need to be respected and supported. And so for that week, everybody understands them. They're not the weird ones,
Right.
There are more persons with brain injury there than there aren't. So they're in the majority and they're teaching us a few things.
I bet they are.
A few years ago, I tell this story about, we've had this poker game that's been going on for 30 years. And the guys just come with coffee cans full of change. And the rule has always been, if you can get yourself to bed by yourself, you can stay up until the last counselor goes to bed. Well, this particular night, I was the last counselor, and I went into the dining hall and I said to Wes and Sean, it's time to break up your game, guys. Come right out onto the dining hall porch and smoke your cigarettes and go to bed. So they were doing that. And Wes looks at Sean and starts to grunt and gesture. Wes had lost all ability to speak as a result of his accident. So he's looking at Sean and he's going, And Sean takes this long drag off his cigarette. He says, well, I'll get him out of the dryer, but I'm not folding them for you. And Wes goes, all right. And I said to Sean, I'm really good at deciphering aphasic speech, but I would never have gotten that. How did you get that? He said, because I used to talk like that. So imagine a world where there was only 1 week out of the year that you could go someplace and be understood when you talked like that.
Wow.
That's what camp is. We can guarantee that for that week, Wes is going to be understood.
How absolutely powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. You have made me even happier that we awarded you this grant. I am so excited that we were able to do this. And I hope this conversation is just the beginning of a beautiful relationship between the Brain Injury Association of Virginia and HobbleJog.
Well, Carrie, if anybody from HobbleJog ever wanted to come down and see camp, we would be delighted to have you there. We have members from the Pilot Club, which is a community service organization. They come out and they do tie-dye with our campers, every week. People come and visit to see it because you just can't understand the scope of it in a conversation. And so we'd be delighted to have you come and visit. Our counselors work so hard, and this money goes a long way. These are all college kids, poor college kids, and they really enjoy this money. Most of them use it for a pizza and a beer after camp, because trust me, they need some real not camp food and they deserve a beer.
I bet they do.
Yeah. But one of the things that I'll say is, in reference to a comment that you made earlier, there are a number of other states that conduct a version of camp. Many of these states will do a long weekend and they'll have family come with them. And so they'll do programming for the families and programming for the survivors. And I think that's fine. And we may decide to add one weekend camp in the far southwestern portion of the state. but I don't know that any other BIA is doing it like we're doing. Other BIAs will support a camp that is being run, for example, by Easter SEALs for folks with brain injuries. But we're the only ones crazy enough to do it all ourselves and to do it for 2 weeks. And
for 40 years.
And for 40 years and 40 campers. And yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
But it's enriched my life more than I can ever express. So many of the counselors that have come to camp have bonded with the program and adopted my husband and I as a second set of parents. And so I have 10 kids at camp that will call me mom, and whose kids will call me, Chicky, which is my grandma name, because we're a family. We're a family, and we do That's this awesome. For family.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anne. I really appreciate the time that you spent talking with me today. And again, I am so lucky to be the one to be able to present this grant. I got the best job out of the whole board. I get to give away the money. It's so awesome. And it has, wow, this has been so enlightening and so exciting. And I will definitely take you up on your offer to visit camp. I would love to do that. That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, you should be there on dance night. I'll send you a video, and that just shows you a little bit of dance night. It's just a happy place to be.
It sounds like it. And wow, amazing work. Thank you so much for all that you do. And thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Well, thank you, Carrie. Your questions were great. And I'm so delighted that you've responded in the way you have. And please tell the rest of the board of the HobbleJog Foundation how grateful we are.
I will absolutely do that. And I guarantee everyone's going to be watching this video. So I'm going to, hold on.